We're so focused on cardio, but I think as we age, maintaining your muscle mass is critical. It's critical for bone health, it's critical for hormone health, a number of things. So many women in particular are afraid of resistance training or weight training. So we need to shift that, first of all, because it's critical for healthy aging. And everybody's at a different stage. You obviously don't jump into something, but small sets with heavier weight is something that I favor. Mm-hmm. It's enough to kind of stimulate that response for muscle growth and adaptation, but not enough to lead to burnout.
Right.
You don't need to do to fatigue necessarily.
Hey folks, it's Mike Malter here. Welcome back to another video. We're live with my friend Dr. Sara Kinnon. And today we're going to talk about training, adrenal fatigue, and how to build muscle and how your training and exercise requirements change throughout the lifespan, because you work with a lot of women, Dr. Sara Kinnon. Yeah. But I think let's start off a little bit with adrenal fatigue and overtraining. I know you have a personal experience with this. There's a lot of questions and controversy when, does adrenal fatigue exist? If so, what are some of the molecular causes? Is it at the adrenal level, the brain level? And then how do you really treat it? I get this question a lot. So what do I do? Do I stop coffee? Where do I really start with this? So maybe let's first give us the landscape of your personal journey through adrenal fatigue and kind of how you got there and what you've been doing now up to this point to restore your body.
Oh boy, that's a long story. Yeah. I think adrenal fatigue, we're so used to hearing that term. Right. Everybody understands that term. But we've had many conversations before, is it an adrenal problem? Is it a brain problem? I think it's a little bit of both. Adrenal fatigue, your adrenals produce hormones, the most popular being cortisol. Cortisol keeps you happy, it keeps you running through the day, it gives you energy, it gets you out of stressful situations. So it's important and we need it. But the problem is especially kind of in North American lifestyle, we're go, 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 and we get rewarded for being busy, and we get rewarded for how much can you do, how much did you accomplish. So your adrenals can't necessarily keep up, and they'll get tired. So is that a result of the actual adrenal function, or is it this overstimulation from your brain? Mm-hmm. Research lately suggests it's this overstimulation from your brain. In my own personal case, I went through medical school at Bastyr, mm-hmm. which is demanding.
Right.
It may not necessarily be physically demanding, but it was definitely obviously mentally demanding. You're stressing your mind, you're stressing your body with lack of sleep, maybe not eating as well as you could, not exercising as much because you're studying all the time. I think this is when I first started to feel that adrenal fatigue, and our professors were warning us against it. You've got to support yourself, you've got to have balance in life, and yeah, I've got this exam tomorrow. Yeah, I've got to study for, and maybe that's when certain things start to collapse.
Interesting.
I'd be so tired, so mentally tired, but when I laid down in bed, I could not sleep. Right. I've suffered from asthma and allergies my whole life, and all of a sudden I was getting bronchitis in the middle of summer. So things start to fall apart. There's that balance isn't there,
right? Or
your ability to balance isn't there. So fast forward a few years when I'm running a business and a practice, and that is stressful in itself. You're dealing with sick people. You're dealing with staff. You're dealing maybe with
landlords, all kinds of
everything.
Yeah.
I was looking to balance my stress, because knowing that, okay, I'm really stressed out, I need to do something to balance, and exercise was lacking. So I knew I had to increase exercise, so I turned to kind of the high intensity exercise lifestyle, and it was good. It gave me exactly what I needed. I got that mental break from work. I felt good, I could go home, I could relax and sleep. But of course then, I was feeling so good, I wanted to do more and more and more and more of it. So again, that kind of balance shifted, and I started to fall apart again. Mm-hmm. So less sleep or disrupted sleep. started to come into play. I started getting aches and pains and found it a lot harder. I was always sore. And then eventually that went to an extreme, and I realized I had 2 broken legs.
Wow, which is remarkable. I mean, in the sense that you were training that much, right? That you actually physically put that much shear stress on your bones that you broke your legs. It's really, most people are not exercising enough. So to kind of summarize, you took exercise too far, and I think a lot of people that overtrain, like you said, I mean, that becomes the outlet, and then it becomes a pathological, almost an addiction of sorts.
Well, yeah, you get that endorphin release, and you feel good, and it's the best part of your day. So how's this bad for me?
Right.
And that's a really hard lesson to get through to my patients who maybe are living an extreme lifestyle, which very often we do in North America. Work hard all day, exercise at night. I mean, if you can do Ironman, you're fantastic. If you know, look at what you can accomplish in a day. It shouldn't be about the hustle, it should be about the rest.
Mm-hmm. Right, but we don't really reward the rest. It's really about the grind. But this is not an uncommon scenario. Like, we see a lot of CEOs, executives, attorneys doing Ironmans, triathlons, ultra running, CrossFit in your situation. And people end up, like, what slows them down is an injury, as it happened to you, like a torn bicep for people that I know.
Yep.
For me, it was low back, and then with cycling, we could talk about that later. But so let's pause. So you realize that you've been overtraining, and you've built up this habit, this association with exercise that was your release. Now you're stuck. You're sedentary. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Did you start meditating? Like, how did you cope with the daily stressors of life at that point?
Well, that was a journey in itself, because you were going from high speed to no speed. Mm-hmm. I still found a way to incorporate physical activity. I did a lot of upper body movements. I had a great kind of team around me, which would come up with, okay, what could you do today? Yeah. I still maintained weightlifting. I would bench press with no legs, or do a lot of pull-ups. So that was still very meditative for me. Spending time in nature, even if I went across the street here, obviously we're oceanfront, and maybe being mindful outside, not necessarily strict meditation, but nature meditation.
Sure.
That really helped to shift it, but it took a lot of time. It's not something that, okay, well,
A burnout, flip a switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm better. I had to really find ways where I could incorporate it and be successful in it and feel so. Build on small activities.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk a little bit about that upper body training, because I've seen you with like 2, they're not casts, but they're like braces on your foot, and you're doing like handstand push-ups, right? So I'm like, wow, she is hardcore, man. That's really awesome. So let's go back to the upper body training. So was that doing you a favor in terms of, was it restorative for the adrenals, or was it still too much? Because I get this question a lot actually from doctors. Like, I burnt myself out through medical school, running a business, running a practice, having kids. Like, I know I'm an adrenal fatigue patient. And my advice is like, yeah, lift weights, but don't push it. But what do
Absolutely
you think?
not. You can't go to that fatigue level. You can't go to that lying on the floor, oh, I feel so good, I just push myself. It's more doing small sets. For me it was, I needed to be active. I needed to move in some way. Mm-hmm. So adjusting the intensity down and forced rest.
Yeah, so you were talking a little bit, like your rests were longer.
Yeah.
Like a minute or 90 seconds. Mm-hmm. So you were still pushing yourself to cause some damage to your muscles and all the adaptation.
And to stimulate. Mm-hmm. But then giving myself
so it wasn't supersetting and doing all the metcons and timed intervals. And,
no.
Yeah. Here's what's interesting about weight training that I think is particularly important for adrenal fatigue, is we know there's so many different metabolic hormones like growth hormone, testosterone, anabolic, trying to like ascertain, if we scale back and look at adrenal fatigue, we know there's a lot of catabolism, cortisol, a lot of breakdown. And so it seems to me from just a logical perspective that resistance training can be a natural way to like help to ameliorate some of the damaging effects of adrenal fatigue. But again, it's all in the context of what's going on with the body, so not push it too far.
Mm-hmm. You have to adjust. We're constantly in motion. Our stress levels are constantly changing. I always say your hormones are like a symphony. And hormones, it's all your hormones. It's that testosterone, cortisol, DHEA, estrogen, progesterone. And as you kind of move through life and stress levels and activity levels might change, if one thing drops or if one thing goes out of tune, you're going to notice. Everything's going to sound different. So maintaining that balance and adjusting as you go along.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about that, because we haven't brought that up yet on the podcast. You know, you recommend DHEA, think progesterone, pregnenolone. Everyone's so unique and different, so I know it's hard for you to give like a blanket, this is what works, but are there any trends or patterns that you experience in yourself and in patients doing these advanced cortisol and adrenal assessments?
You know, I think, you know, my patient base, I deal with a lot of athletes, I deal with a lot of busy executive women, mothers that are still physically active. I usually do full hormone panel on them. Just your cortisol is not enough. Mm-hmm. DHA does play a role. Testosterone does play a role. Human growth hormone, progesterone, particularly for kind of maybe that perimenopausal woman or a woman over 35 who's super active, super stressed. Progesterone's key. It starts to fall fast over 35. Mm. And if you're living a high-stress life and your cortisol might not be where it should be, your progesterone is going to lend to that stress response. So then progesterone is not doing what progesterone should be doing. Mm-hmm. And so then you'll start to have maybe, you know, menstrual cycle changes or mood changes or body composition changes. So, or your thyroid might not work. You know, we need progesterone for our thyroid. You know, taking a look at all your hormones is critical. Mm-hmm. Particularly, I haven't seen DHEA plummets as well. The one thing that surefire will get your DHEA and testosterone up is that resistance training.
Interesting. You see that in both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you want to maintain that muscle mass,
yeah.
Right? And you need that hormone to do so.
Okay, let's go back on progesterone. So you hit on, what are like the 5 common, like are there any symptoms where people say, oh, you talked weight changes and hormonal changes where you're like, oh my gosh, that is low progesterone. Anything else? Like, so if someone's listening right now, and obviously we recommend people work with a practitioner and do testing, but are again, like the telltale symptoms?
Sleep disturbance, like if you're one that, you know, maybe you can fall asleep, but you're waking frequently and you don't know why, or you're waking every couple hours, that can be your progesterone. If you are one where, you know, right before your period or kind of in that week before your expected period, your mood is plummeting, or that kind of lack of control on your mood.
Like you might like explode in any moment if something gets...
Yeah, mm-hmm. You know, your progesterone might be low.
Interesting. So it involves, yeah, I've heard that with sleep. I know a lot of practitioners do recommend pregnenolone and progesterone in the evening for that, mm-hmm. for the sleep properties.
It does have a sedative effect if you take it, particularly if you take it orally.
Interesting,
yeah.
Okay. Now what about for the men? We obviously know that like overtraining lends to low testosterone and DHEA crashes. Any feedback there? Like, what do they need progesterone, or like, do you recommend supplementing?
Not normally. You know, I haven't found progesterone to plummet in men. Men do have progesterone and estrogen, which not every man knows. But I haven't found the plummet there. I do find that plummet in the testosterone. Mm-hmm. The DHA might not plummet, but the conversion to testosterone. So that again is kind of still balancing the stress response, but in a little bit of a different fashion than women.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's talk about testosterone a little bit, but I think we got to finish up the adrenals because I think people are kind of wondering, okay, what else do you do and what do you do now for exercise? You know, in terms of, I know herbs are a big part of your adrenal recovery, getting out in nature, walking. What else? Yoga, maybe? I mean, let's talk about.
Yeah, if you're somebody who is completely burned out, like adrenal dysfunction could be a few things, as you know. It could be you're running too high, or it could be you're running too low. If you're in that really fatigued, then you've gone past that too high and you're now too low, then you're gonna wanna look at more restorative activity. So yeah, doing the meditation or yoga, or, you know, in my case, I can't sit necessarily in a yoga class because my mind will take over. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was getting out in nature and appreciating what's around me and grounding, like walking with bare feet.
Cool.
We go through our days and nobody touches the earth.
I know, it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, not to divert the topic, but my nails are usually always dirty from gardening, and people kind of look at me funny like, what, I mean, don't you clean your nails? Actually, someone commented on a video because I waved my hand like this and there was some dirt under the nails. It's like, well, don't you get out and like get in the garden or get dirty? I mean, we're so sterile, but
yeah.
Anyway, it's really interesting. So grounding, you've actually...
more dirt.
Yeah. So grounding, you've actually found that to be like a part of your recovery.
Yeah. Awesome. And to be honest, I was quite resistant to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that can't do That's not going to do me any good,
Right.
sitting out there. But when you actually try it and commit to it, you will see.
Mm-hmm.
So it's adjusting, like, what stage are you at in terms of adrenal fatigue? It's adjusting the activity based on that, while still trying to feel good. Like, I will still exercise at high intensity, but maybe it's a little bit different. I still will include, maybe some forced rest, or I'll take the intensity down. Mm-hmm. Heart rate variability monitoring has become a big part of my practice and kind of personal care.
Cool.
So if I'm not ready to train heavy, well, I'll take it down.
Whereas before you would have just pushed through and said, I'm going
I
hard
can
today.
accomplish this.
Yeah, I can do it all.
Yeah.
And then the result is not very good.
Yeah.
Right. So you use the first morning HRV, or do you do throughout the day?
I've only done first morning so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you found that correlates pretty well. Me too, with symptoms.
Yeah,
recovery.
absolutely. I was kind of blown away
Yeah.
when I first started. I'm like, but I feel good today.
Yeah. And then you push through it and you're like, oh my gosh, you pay for it later, right?
Yeah.
Have you found, Dr. Kinnon, when you get to a point where you're pretty adrenal fatigued, you've really been pushing the envelope, that over stressors, traveling, alcohol, like when you're pushing it, that it brings you back faster to that fatigue point? Have you built up your resilience over your recovery that you feel like you're pretty solid at this point in terms of your adrenal health?
In terms of my recovery, I feel like I'm doing really well now. I'm a very good gauge of, okay, I'm pushing it, I need to take a step back. Mm-hmm. If I'm starting to crave maybe more alcohol or crave something, on the end of the scale, then I know, okay, I've got to kind of pull it back a little bit. So I think my adrenals are recovering, and I'm shifting that message from my brain, that HPA axis, to be more balanced. Mm-hmm. I think it's working, but it's hard, and it's a constant battle. But, as opposed to maybe something setting me off, and then just pushing me over the edge before, now I'm like, okay, we can deal with this, and I respond more accordingly.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about balancing circadian rhythms. I know you do wear the blue light blocking glasses and get out in the sun in the morning. How important, on the hierarchy of all the therapies, from herbs and nature therapy, grounding, where does circadian rhythm and avoiding that blue light at night, where does that fit into the whole mix?
I think it's becoming increasingly important. I mean, we're bombarded all day long with artificial light, our phones are going all the time, we're buzzing, we're exposed to electronic radiation. Right. So I think it's becoming increasingly important. And it seems kind of technology is going the opposite way. We're getting more and more wireless, we're getting more high tech, but shutting off is critical.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring up that fact about how technology is kind of moving away with where us in the integrative or functional medicine health space, we're trying to minimize our exposure to Bluetooth and wireless things and get more old school, and Apple's getting rid of their hardwire ports and things, which is interesting. But so you talked about how your executives that you work with, we were talking offline, how you have them create more boundaries in their own adrenal fatigue program, because normally, and you can articulate this much better than I can, but a lot of folks turn to wine at night to unwind for all the stress, and so they're doing emails until 10, 11 o'clock at night, but you have some boundaries that you like to create, and that has a really profound effect in their life. So talk about that.
So whenever I have somebody who's like, oh, I need that wine at the end, don't take away my wine, don't take away my wine. Well, okay, necessarily I won't take it away right away, but maybe if you're having a bottle, we're gonna take it down. But if you're getting that effect from wine, but it just relaxes me, it's a depressant. So it's stimulating that parasympathetic response. It's going to chill you out, at least initially. So we need to find a way in your daily life to do that. So obviously, in some of the busy executives, they're not going to leave their job.
Right.
Necessarily, it still provides them joy, and obviously they need to work. But it's creating boundaries. So, okay, do you take a lunch? No, I never take a lunch. So let's create a lunch. Can you take an hour every day, or can you take half an hour? Maybe go outside for 15 minutes, on your lunch. So we create small breaks throughout the day. Let's shut off your email by 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock. So we create, turn off your phone. We create small changes and build on that. And for some people, that's enough. Some people, they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that. I didn't do much after 6, but I was always worried. I was always checking. And then they had so much time. whether they can connect with family, which then also leads to more recovery.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what I found too, because I've been in that situation where I'm checking email all night, your productivity is not very good at that time of the day.
Yeah.
And so you're being not mindful and aware and present with your family. Your productivity is really not that great. Even though you think you're doing stuff, you're really not. And that time, like you said, should be utilized to exercise, for personal development, for stress reduction, for bonding. And so it's tough. But so that's why a little tip, I just put my phone on airplane mode, put it away, and it's like it's not even there. Because if it's there, there's temptation. Like, I gotta check it. It's like, what am I missing out on? So let's talk a little bit about, because folks that have adrenal fatigue also sometimes have body composition issues. They want to lose weight. Do we want to get the adrenals on a stable platform before we start talking weight loss, or is there a chicken or the egg? What comes first?
I think it's very individual. It depends on what stage their adrenal health is, or that HPA axis is. Body composition, everything comes into play. It's your activity level, it's your diet, it's your hormones. So if we can work on all levels, your body will actually recover on its own. You don't necessarily, but as particularly for women, I'll get that kind of perimenopausal or menopausal woman who's worried about they're pecking on the fat around the middle. Okay, well, what's happening? Let's take a look and what are you doing for activity? Where's your cortisol level at? It's not just cortisol. Where's your insulin level at? Is insulin resistance coming into play? So, taking a look at everything is important. It's critical. You need all the pieces of the puzzle. Right,
because I do get that question a lot. Like, oh, my adrenals are burnt out and I can exercise. And it's like, I think there's more to the story, right? And
you may have to shift the type of exercise.
Sure.
Like that chronic cardio, going for a 2-hour run. That is not necessarily healthy for your adrenals. Maybe you need to do some hills or walk up hills, or increase that intensity and lower the duration. You need to adjust for what stage you're at.
I like that, adjust for what stage you're at, and we'll talk about a little bit. We wanted to make sure we bring up adjusting your exercise for how with age, because people's hormones, metabolism, energy, all changes throughout the lifespan. And I think you're a perfect person to kind of pick your brain on this topic, Dr. Kinnon, because you hold a record for the snatch, which is a really complex Olympic lift that takes
I don't know if I still hold it.
Okay, we'll verify that. But so how does fitness change with lifespan, and what are your recommendations for people in their 40s, 50s, and on?
I think we're so focused on cardio but I think as we age, and we've talked offline about this, is maintaining your muscle mass is critical. It's critical for bone health, it's critical for hormone health, a number of things. So so many women in particular are afraid of resistance training or weight training. So we need to shift that, first of all, because it's critical for healthy aging, healthy body composition.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, the mindset or kind of the perceived notion surrounding, resistance training and this notion that people are going to get bulky and all that sort of stuff. But you yourself have done a lot of Olympic lifting and powerlifting type movements, and I don't consider you bulky. I mean, you have a nice physique, you're lean. So did you ever get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to stop lifting because I'm like a monster?
No.
It doesn't.
No.
What's the deal with that?
It doesn't happen.
Yeah. That ideology or that preconceived notion about lifting weights is almost as like concrete in people's brains as the fat ideology, that fat makes you fat. It's almost like in that cholesterol causes heart disease. These are things that we need to just get out of our heads.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's very, very hard to shift that mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, even talking diet, I eat healthy. Well, what do you eat in a day? Well, I have cereal for breakfast.
It's gluten-free, right?
Yeah. Just kidding. So you have to incorporate small changes, and doctor it means teacher. So part of that is teaching my patients how to succeed, how to maintain their health, not just treat disease.
Speaking of that, like being the teacher, the influencer, you put a lot of your working out, like whether it's exercise or going and walking in the park and stuff like that, getting your nature therapy, you put on that on your social media, which is a nice way to illustrate like, hey, I'm doing this too. I'm working, I'm improving my health and going along this journey with everyone else. I'm not some guru telling you what to do, but doing something different.
You practice what you preach.
Totally.
Yeah. Otherwise, nobody's going to trust you. Nobody's going to believe you.
Right. Okay, so let's get into the specifics of exercise changes associated with increased age. I think a lot of folks in their 60s and 70s do really well with yoga. That's part of their therapy and stuff. But what about resistance training? What sets and reps, volume? Do you have any specifics that you found to be successful, or is everyone different?
I think everybody's different, and everybody's at a different stage. You obviously don't jump into something, but small sets with heavier weight is something that I favor. It's enough to kind of stimulate that response for muscle growth and adaptation, but not enough to lead to burnout.
Right.
You don't need to do to fatigue necessarily, or 25 reps with 2-pound weights or whatnot. It's going heavier for shorter sets.
Okay, so for someone that's never really lifted before, so that would be like 5 repetitions.
Yeah, 3 to 5.
Ah.
Yeah.
So that's totally different from what a lot of even personal trainers recommend for that, which is awesome. So there's been some pictures of elderly folks deadlifting and squatting, which they kind of go viral. Yeah. So you're talking getting back to the old school bodybuilding techniques.
Yep.
Love that.
And the big muscle groups, right? I mean, look, we're sitting in a chair, and we're going to sit in chairs for the rest of our life, and we need to be able to get up out of that chair.
Totally. I love that. That's beautiful. There's been some research, Dr. Kinnon. I've been personally interested, looking at the data, comparing endurance exercise to weightlifting, and the data, preponderance of data for heart disease reduction, for diabetes reduction, for brain health is weighted towards weightlifting. But we always hear about cardio, get your 180 minutes of cardio per week, but so the data's there, guys, pay attention to this, get lifting.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid you're not going to get big.
Right. If it was that easy, I think there'd be a lot more bodybuilders out there, and you wouldn't need steroids. Come on. You just get bigger and bigger with age. And
lifting weights can be cardiovascular too.
Right.
I can lose my breath very easily.
Totally. Yeah.
Or be challenged.
But unlike doing traditional steady state cardio where you lose your breath, when you lose your breath via weight training, you create all that oxygen debt that in turn has all those metabolic effects, the EPOC. And
absolutely.
Love that. Let's kind of finish off with some of the herbs. Okay, I know we kind of bounced around a little bit, so we'll finish off weight training. Some of the herbs that for you and your patients have been particularly effective. What are those for adrenal health?
Oh gosh, the list is endless. I think it's very individual. For the athletes, I do rhodiola and ginseng. Ashwagandha is a great one, another adaptogen. Schisandra. Maybe for somebody maybe for a man, I deal with a lot of women, but maybe for some of my male patients who say have that high DHA but low testosterone, coleus for scolin is great for helping that conversion. So I'll use that. Everybody needs an adaptogen.
Yeah, the coleus for scolin, that one. I think okay, interesting. I know there's some good research on thyroid function as well. Interesting. What about for the ladies, menopausal and so forth?
For herbs?
Cohosh, yeah.
Chase tree or vitex, that's great for boosting the progesterone. Black cohosh, of course. The list is endless.
You really have to work, it's individual, yeah?
Yeah, rhubarb extract I'll use for some people with maybe the hot flash side of things.
Interesting.
Yeah. That one is a little bit more individual, and I'll kind of tailor it, but...
That's fantastic. Well, Dr. Kinnon, before we go to some final questions here, is there anything we didn't get to address regarding adrenal fatigue, nutrition, training, changes in body composition with age you want to
I think that we could talk forever.
Right.
There's so much to cover. I think that there's an answer for everybody. There's not one answer for everybody, though. It's an individual solution, and you really have to work with a functional medicine practitioner to find out, okay, where are you at and what is going to work for you in this situation to get you where you need to be.
Right.
There's not one plan for everybody.
Right.
But there is a plan for everybody.
Right. You just have to discover it.
Yeah.
And be open-minded. Just because the guru says this works for them, it may not work for you.
Yeah. And maybe you take a little bit here, a little bit there, but
I like that.
There's a solution.
Yeah. One thing I didn't get to address that I wanted to tackle, and this identity-based aspect of lifting weights or doing yoga, how much of the mindset do you attribute to success with weight loss or improved fitness? I know for me, I identify myself as being a weightlifter. So you make these subtle, subconscious, lifestyle choices that are congruent with that identity, right? So you eat, decent protein. You don't drink alcohol and stuff like that. How much do you think that plays a role? Because I know you identify, I think, being a CrossFitter in a sense. Is that fair to say? Mm-hmm. How does that play into, where do you weight this identity and this with success?
Your mindset's critical. It's critical to your success. I think what you have to do is find something that works for you, find something that feeds you and doesn't deplete you. For you and I, we like that weight, we like the barbell, and we found a way to make it work for where we're at. Right. For a time I thought, I'll never get to be lifting again, mm-hmm. and I still have to coach myself sometimes that I'm not where I was, but okay, this is where I am today, and look at everything I did today. So mindset is critical. You have to build on your successes. So finding something that you like and that feeds you versus depletes you. Mm-hmm.
That's huge. I want to tease out what you said right there. You have to build upon your successes. And so if you just go to the gym every day and do cardio, like how do you really either do more cardio or, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I don't know that there's an objective way to like ascertain whether or not you're improving or not improving, right?
Right, unless you're running a half marathon or that and timing yourself, whereas what feeds me is okay, today I deadlifted this, last month it was that, mm-hmm. or so you're constantly building and improving, particularly as you age, and people think, oh, you fall apart as you age, and it's like, right. No, I'm getting better.
Yeah, like I'm getting stronger. Yeah,
I'm as strong as I ever have been.
Yeah, I think that's, in my opinion, that's like the overriding reason why so many people tend to stick with weightlifting longer, because people mm-hmm. bounce around from program. Like you mentioned, you did kickboxing and then you did TRX, and some people do P90X and these other things. And I think those are all great. You're moving and everything, but that's why weight training is so great. You have that objective feedback, just like you mentioned HRV training.
And it's personal, right? Like you're not competing against anybody but yourself.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So I love the barbell. I'll never give up the barbell.
Yeah. So speaking of the barbell, we'll talk a little bit about supplements here. If there was one herb, nutrient, or botanical, Dr. Kinnon, that you just could not live without, vitamin D and omega-3s are covered. What do you got?
I love turmeric. I know that quite a lot of people say that, but for anti-inflammatory, so recovery, joint health, cancer prevention.
Yeah. Are you cooking with it too? Smoothies?
I do cook with it. I love golden milk, but I do find for that therapeutic effect, you do need to take it in supplemental form. Mm-hmm. Sometimes dietary wise, you need a lot of it to get that therapeutic level.
Yeah, the absorption's not really there. Yeah. I think when you cook with it, it's a little bit better for the microbiome. It's my personal hunch. All those polyphenols fuel the good guys.
So we probiotics, microbiome. I love probiotics, but we can do a lot with diet, and I think we've gone back and forth a lot on this, on feeding your microbiome and keeping it healthy. Probiotics are another great one, but you can work a lot with that with diet.
Totally. Yeah, I think, it's one thing to supplement with a probiotic, but you definitely have to have that dietary diversity, right? Because you can't supplant that with just a probiotic, right? Yeah. So super important. So morning routines, we talked a little bit about getting out in nature, getting that sunlight. We know you're running a busy business in West Vancouver here, very affluent area, super busy. What does the first couple hours of your day look like?
Well, I get up very early. I've kind of adjusted as kind of my my work schedule has changed, traffic, mm-hmm. and commute, and adrenal health has changed. I used to work out in the evenings. Now I'm much more active in the morning. First thing I do when I get up, I actually take my dogs out for a little walk. Cool. And that kind of sets the tone. I absolutely love being out before anybody else is. There's something, your day's not disturbed. You can think about your day. Okay, this is what I need to do and accomplish, or this is what I want. Mm-hmm. So after that, I will head to the gym. Won't be there for more than an hour and a half. And then I follow that up with a good healthy breakfast, post-workout. And then head to work. And typically, when I get to work here, I like to spend a few minutes, we're oceanfront, so I can sit on the beach and appreciate the day so far and visualize what I want the rest of the day to be.
Awesome.
So that's kind of my sacred time before the chaos of a workday comes in. You never asked about the end of the day, but I'll tell you about the end.
Yeah, let's hear it. I love it.
So your day can be quite stressful and I didn't get, or this happened, or run off your feet. So I'll actually end my day with walking, just to kind of chill me out and stimulate that parasympathetic response. Not a speed walk, it's more a nature walk, whether I'm on a trail near my house or I'm always with my dogs.
Nice. And 10 minutes, 15 minutes, does it depend on the day, how much free time?
Depends on the day, depends
Sure.
on the weather. But it's something that I will not give up.
Right.
Or I won't skip out on.
Yeah, okay, a few things come to mind. Have you always been a morning person, and were you able to get up that early when you were adrenal fatigued?
I've always been able to wake up early. It's that, the complete burnout was maybe, okay, I didn't get that cortisol awakening response that we should get within, half an hour of kind of waking up. That took a little bit longer, and so, that's when people are like, I need that coffee.
Yeah.
So, that is a little bit different, but I love the morning. I'm most productive, I'm most clear.
And you mentioned like you're having success, like you talked about, you need that success, that progress begets more progress. And so what I found in my personal life, getting up in the morning and doing stuff, reading, doing exercise, gardening work, whatever, you feel like you've already made a lot of, you've had a lot of progress. And
done something for yourself.
Yeah, and so it makes the day go a lot better. Whereas in the opposite would be like you get up, you rush, you go to work, and like you're already stressed out, and then you're living life on someone else's terms, whether it's patients you're working with or a boss, whatever it is, and it doesn't set a good tone for the day, I've found.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to work out, I'd go directly from work to working out for a couple of hours. And at the time that was fine. My mornings were a little bit slower paced, so I could get more accomplished, but my days were chaotic, and then at night. But now that life is busier, injuries and so forth, I found that, oh my gosh, I have no time for me. And so I shifted it. And the only time I could get that in, guaranteed, without like kind of life interrupting, was in the morning.
And then because you identify yourself as being a morning person, then you're going to go to bed at night or early and not like stay up to 11 and do Snapchat and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That reinforces good behavior, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. So
I really start shutting down quite early in the evening.
You don't need help. You don't need the wine to get to it.
Yeah. People know not to call me after 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Not that I'm in bed at 8 o'clock, but I'm
getting there.
Yeah, and I'm starting that kind of quiet time, preparing my body.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, we talk about morning routines and how important they are, but evening routines, I mean, your morning routine is a success because your evening routine was planned appropriately.
Yeah.
So important. Thanks. I'll maybe incorporate that into the podcast a little bit. But let's talk about, if you were to bump shoulders with someone from the World Health Organization, what lifestyle or health and nutrition tip would you want them to know about?
That's a tough one. I have so much to say.
Yeah.
There's so much emphasis. We talk about healthcare, but it's not healthcare currently. It's disease care. So if I could talk to somebody, I really would want to shift that into the importance of, okay, we need to maintain our health, not wait till there's a disease and then fix it. So more emphasis on diet, more emphasis on exercise, more emphasis on lifestyle.
Yeah. To summarize what you're saying, I think, Dr. Kinnon, is to really look at vitality as a metric of health. Instead of just, a lot of people think, oh, you don't have a disease, then you're okay.
Then you're fine.
Yeah, no problem. You're good. But really,
the absence of disease is not necessarily health.
Right. Yeah, it can be
or
tough.
optimum health.
And we hear people in their 60s and 70s say, I'm not on any medications, I'm good. Just because you're not on medications doesn't mean that you're necessarily making all the positive lifestyle choices that you could be.
Right, so what can we do to maintain that health and have you age well?
Super important. So I know you have a couple different websites, you're active on social media. If someone wants to check you out online, where should they go?
So my most active kind of daily channel where I'm posting tips and so forth is Instagram. I find it really easy, user-friendly, so at Dr. Sara K. It's DrSarak. My clinic's website is bellevuenaturalhealth.ca. I also have drsarakinnon.com. Both are kind of under reconstruction right now, but there's still information there.
Fantastic.
Facebook as well.
Yeah. I think I follow you on Facebook too. Well, Dr. Kinnon, I really appreciate you coming on the
thank
show.
you.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And
Thanks for
keep
coming
up
to Vancouver.
Absolutely. It's so beautiful here. So I'll put those links in the show notes, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you have a question or comment for me or Dr. Sara, please type them in below. And if you're listening on iTunes, you can check out the show notes over on the blog at highintensityhealth.com.